Guys, I'm going to keep the intro short. We are in episode 2 with Mike Morby. We could not keep it contained to one episode because I know you'd be in the car and you'd just be like, guys, I cannot write this down. And so we were just going for it. First episode was all about knowing your costs, knowing your numbers. How expensive are you just, as a person, as a business? And now we're going to get into actually like building packages and how do we actually build those prices? How do we know if we're profitable or not? So without any further ado, here's a second episode with Mike Morby on profitability. So Mike, now that we have talked about just basically like determining our costs, like how much does it cost for us to live and maybe run our business in, a moderately lean fashion, maybe not in like a, hey, we have a Lamborghini as a company car fashion. What's the next step for using that data to like determine our pricing? Like how do we take, our fixed goods, our variable goods, so, our health insurance, which is, monthly or yearly, and then like how many albums we have based on how many weddings. How do we use all of that data and what we want to make and what we want to profit? How do we use that to make our actual pricing? Because like part of me is just like, okay, let me just divide it by the number of weddings. But there's even a little bit more than that to it. And so what's the next step, man? Like guide us through that.
Yeah, like you said, figuring that stuff out first is so important. Yeah, what you want to make, what your costs are. All of that sort of stuff. And to clarify on that 40,000 a month thing, that yesterday where you said people might be crashing their cars, hearing that number, that includes paying us and retirement and all of that sort of stuff as well. That's not just running the business. Just wanted to clarify that. If that was just running the business, then we're definitely spending too much money. But yeah, the simple answer, and I think I kind of hit on this in the first episode, the simple answer is, what do you want to make? What does it cost to run your business? How many weddings do you want to shoot? So you take what you want to make, how much does it cost to run your business? You get that number, and then you divide it by the number of weddings you want to shoot. And there, I usually say, very simplistically, like there's much more that goes into it, but very simplistically, then that's how much you need to charge as a base per wedding. So if you need to make $100,000 a year, but you only wanted to shoot 20 weddings a year, then you need to charge a base of $5,000 per wedding.
Right.
In order to do that. But then, yeah, it does get much more complicated when you start factoring in albums, your tolls, parking, office supplies, some of that sort of stuff. It does start to get a little more complicated. And that's where keeping really good numbers is super important. So like with QuickBooks, we can run reports and say, how much money did we spend on albums last year? How much money did we spend on flash drives, which I got called old school, still mailing out flash drives, but I still like the tangible product of a flash drive.
It's coming back, man. It's coming back.
Postage, paper, all of that sort of stuff. We can have all of those down to the detail and then be able to accurately project how much is that gonna cost. And then some people will, and the spreadsheet, again, which I always mention that we had in the workshop, you can put in and say, package 1, I want to do 20 of those. I want to do 10 of package 2, 10 of package 3, and 5 of package 4. And, kind of get an average of, how much you need to charge for that as well. But it's also really just being realistic of where you're at in your business. And it is important to know what are other people charging out there, because you don't want to outprice yourself because you have this ideal of what you want to make. And I only want to shoot 20 weddings a year and make, X amount of money. And somebody's having to charge $10,000 a wedding right off the bat, which is just not realistic. So yeah, just figuring out those costs, keeping accurate numbers, is really important.
Yeah, I know one of those weird quirks, the kind of the idea of like the wedding minimum at the base price. I learned from a photographer a few years ago that I went to his workshop, and I kind of asked him like, so, what do you need versus like, what do you play with, or what do you dream with? What do you grow with? And he was like, I need 24 weddings to break even on expenses, or to, just to pay for my life or whatever. And, since then, I've always been like, okay, how many weddings do I need? And the idea too is kind of like you're saying, like having them at base price to help determine you is saying, hey, worst case scenario, let's say I did get, the 30 weddings you want, but let's say they all booked your most boring package, which, we'll get into, but hopefully they're booking somewhere in the middle packages. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay if you just book those 30, of your most boring, ideally probably your most profitable packages in theory, because like your costs are down, because you're not including a lot of tangible products and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it is good to have that base. If everybody's only booking your base package, then probably not a good salesman. But it's good to have that, as anything over this gives me some buffer within my business. What if my cameras go down? What if my lens, what if there's excess cost that I'm not factoring in? But then once, determining who you're talking to, like we've done close to, as a company, I think like 600 weddings, something like that. We're doing 90 weddings a year. So we have a lot of data to know, okay, everybody's not booking our base package. We know what our average price is for me, for each associate, things like that. So we can then more accurately know what we need to charge. But for somebody that doesn't have all of that data, yeah, it's super simple just to say coverage and images. If that's their base package, what do I need to charge? Or coverage, images, and a co-shooter if it's a husband and wife team. I know some people love to add in albums in their base package, stuff like that. So yeah, if everybody just got the base package, would I have enough to cover everything that I need to?
Yeah. No. So what do you do from there? Like, how do you help kind of determine each package, costs, and, what might you want to put an album in? What might you want to put an engagement session in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So with packages in general, so I have two options. I have packages, which there's 4 of them. And each one of those includes all day coverage, the digital images, and a wedding album. And then as you go up, it can add in a co-shooter, parent albums, things like that. And then I have a la carte as well. But you're just starting off when determining what I'm going to charge or what my packages are going to look like. Studies show that if you give somebody only 2 options, 1 or 2 options, it's not enough. If somebody more than 4 options, so 5 plus, it overwhelms them. So that sweet spot is really like 3 to 4 packages. So that's number one of, let's not get too, we're not a diner. We don't need to offer 6 pages of like subpar stuff. We're a fine dining restaurant. Let's just give a couple really choice options. So that's number one. And then, and I'll get into the pricing stuff, of these things. But then, the other thing when determining those packages is just keep them really simple. I feel like some people complicate their pricing too much. And if you're sitting in a wedding meeting or a Zoom or Skype meeting or talking to somebody over the phone, if they're confused on your pricing, so let's say I sometimes see people that, package 1, if you get all of this, then it's a $300 discount. And if you get package 2, then you get an 8x10 and 11x14, and it's a $500 discount. And then they look at it and they're like, discounted from what? And do I want this? And then there's all these a la carte options. it really confuses people. So or people end their pricing in like 95 or 45. So package 1 is $35.95. Package 2 is $41.25. And giving people too many decisions, complicated packages, complicated math, what you're doing there is pulling people away from looking at your images, your personality, your brand, and you're bringing them from that more emotional based decision. Because let's face it, weddings are very, there's a lot of emotional based buying decisions in weddings. That's why people spend $50,000 on flowers that are going to die in a day sometimes. And what you're doing is you're pulling people from this excitement in a buying decision to, okay, this isn't making sense. Let me add this up. What's the best deal? And then they're looking at it more of, let me add the numbers and, see where can I get the best deal? And you've taken them away from the excitement of you and your images and your photography and what you have to offer. Keeping things very simple as far as the packages, very simple with the math, ending things in 0, 0. So my first package is $4,900. My next package is $5,700. And then it goes up from there where it's very simple. So they can look at it and say, I want package 1. And they might not even look at the price. They just know that's what I want, simple math, and they can make a quick buying decision.
Right. One thing that you're talking about, it's just as far as like the when it comes to the client meeting and pricing and stuff like that, I think even this, a lot of people feel like it's salesy or like you're trying to push. And one, we go back to that quote from Gary Vaynerchuk, like, don't be romantic about how you make your money.
Yeah.
And 2, it's like there's an element, and I know you're probably, I don't know if you feel this way because you are so like business minded, but I think it's like when it's really hard to sell albums, it might be because you don't know why you're selling albums. You might not be all in, but if you like truly believe that, hey, package 2 and 3, create, for me, I always say like more time equals less stress. And so, package 2 and 3 are the ones that most couples book. It's the days where they feel the least stressed. There's less variables to worry about. They're not thinking about adding an hour on, the day before a wedding or something like that. But when you go to sell any of these packages, because you know your numbers and because you're solid, you have to be all in. Like you have to believe in what you're selling, not necessarily have to be a salesman. It's not like you're the person at the mall trying to get you to try the skin cream or, somebody selling an MLM that you haven't seen in high school for a long time. It's like, no, like you do this because you love it and you're trying to make it happen. You got to believe in whatever you're selling. So if you believe like package 1, which, maybe if it's your highest package, maybe people don't book it, but you got to believe that if they did, it'd be awesome. And you're having a drone and you're picking them up in a Tesla or something crazy. It's your like your creme de la creme, and you got to be really pumped about it. Like you don't go to a fancy restaurant and you're like, hey, how's the filet mignon? And they're like, nah, it's okay. Yeah. You want them to be like, yes, it's the best thing on the menu.
Yeah, and those fancy restaurants, using that as an example, everything on the menu is great. And another thing that it kind of goes against the flow of how a lot of people structure their pricing. But for me, I'll get the question, as you probably do as well, and other people do, like, what's your most popular package? And a lot of people will have package 1, 2, and 3. Package 1 doesn't really have what people want. Package 3 is like overboard, so everybody goes to package 2. I don't adopt that philosophy. For me, everything on my pricing sheet is desirable, and I don't have a most popular package. And what I've noticed by going that route, like every package 1, all day wedding coverage, digital images, album. Package 2, all day wedding coverage, digital images, album, second photographer. Package 3, all that stuff plus 1 parent album. Package 4, all that stuff plus 2 parent albums. So really they look at it and say, we don't really need a co-shooter. Package 1 is what we want. Oh, we would like one. Package 2 is what we want. Oh, our parents love albums. Package 3, and they'll look at it, and it's really what they want for their wedding, for their family, stuff like that. And I think people can see through the salesiness of, wait, why would I ever want package 1? There's nothing for me in there. Why would I ever want package 3? I don't need 20, framed prints or whatever it might be. I think people can see through that. And I notice people really appreciate that, my pricing is structured in such a way that everything is desirable. And in my packages, like I took out engagement sessions, and those are a la carte. One, because if I don't have to shoot an engagement session, I don't want to, because it's, I'm not going to make as much per hour on an engagement session as I would on a wedding. So, valuing my time there, but also less than half my couples want one. So why am I going to put it in a package if it's something they don't want? People want coverage, images, co-shooters, and albums. Like those are I found the most popular things. So that's what's in my packages. And then everything else is a la carte if they want to add it. So people are all over the map as far as what they book, with the packages. And then, like you said as well, back in the day with albums, I did fear-based selling, which is never a good thing. Like by that, I mean, I fear they're not going to book me. So I'm going to do whatever I can to have them book me. So if I was getting a feeling that they were on a budget, I would say about the album, oh, you don't need to do it through me. You can just have your images and do one through Shutterfly. And I would never sell albums. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to start talking about the value of albums and why they're important and the quality that we provide because of our company that we use. And all of a sudden I started talking about albums differently, and people started booking albums. I started talking about the value of a co-shooter. People started booking co-shooters, and it's not deception. It's what I truly believe, and educating them, and then they can make a decision. Oh yeah, I see the value of a co-shooter. I want one. Or they could say, you know what? I don't really see the value in that. So I'm not going to book one. And I'm talking about them in a positive way of like why they're valuable, but then I'm putting it in their court of you can make the decision whether you want this or not.
Totally. What I just thought of, like, albums now that we've talked about like being bought in and seeing the positivity of what you're selling, and we'll dive into like how do you determine the profitability of each package in a second. But like, guys, if you're listening, like Mike and I will sell you an album right now. Like you're about to get on a plane or in a car to go see family members you haven't seen in a while. And if you had just gotten married, for dang sure if you brought them an album, or you even brought your own album to just walk through the wedding with them if they couldn't make it, that's baller. And that's pretty awesome. And that's like a very fun, if it's not a family tradition, it's a new family tradition you can start because, you just became one, you came together. And like, it's been really fun to tell people, even as I shoot in February or March, but especially during the fall, and say, hey guys, like during family photos, I'll make a joke and be like, all right, everybody stand up real straight, look really good, because, in a few months, you're going to be looking at this under a tree or by a menorah or whatever. And, I really want this to look good for you guys because you're going to see this and you're going to hope that you did a good job. And I just kind of like tease or patronize like the parents a little bit. And they're like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. Like, that's really true. I'm like, yeah, we're not just taking this for the second, not just for vanity. Yeah. We're taking this because you're going to stare at this, in a few weeks at least. And definitely, as I said, like under the tree or whatever, you're going to show your friends at church. And so that's my little mini tip on like how to sell those things that you're like, how do I sell an album? Well, you're not selling the album, you're selling the experience, just like anything else.
And believing in it. Like I believe in print. We have 6 or 7 30 by 40 canvases in our house. Like above our bed, we have 3 30 by 40 canvases, which are massive. We have framed and matted prints in our kids' rooms. In our basement, we have these massive canvases. We have every year we try to create an album of our, family photos we took that year. Our kids look at them once a month. So I'm not selling, and you shouldn't sell somebody something you don't believe in, and people can see right through that. But like, we value print. We don't look at the flash drive of images from our family sessions. We look at the albums and the prints, and I want that for my clients. I think whenever something gets off kilter, like in culture, there's always then a reaction to it. And I think that there's becoming a reaction to this digital, everything's on the computer age. I think people are starting to react to that and saying, you know what, I want to pull my images off of the computer and have something that I can hold. And I don't think print is dead. I think it's coming back because people are reacting to this everything's online sort of mentality right now. And in the past year, we sold 90 albums. People are definitely buying albums, and they value them.
That is crazy. You need to do like an album course, Mike. That is insane.
Yeah, I'm just learning some of that stuff, but yeah, maybe one day.
That's insane.
Those are parent albums as well. So we didn't sell 90. We did 90 weddings last year. We didn't sell 90 albums to every couple, but yeah, if you add in like parent albums and things like that, that's where that 90 number came from.
I love that. So going back to, pricing our packages. So let's say we've got, at least 3 or 4, the mentality at least is kind of the same, and essentially like you don't want anybody to, the first package is fine, but it's like, it's tall, medium, and venti or whatever, tall, grande, and venti at Starbucks. And the tall is not enough and the venti's too much, and you need to land somewhere in the middle. How do we actually price those out? So, let's use your $100,000 as the take home income vibe, after expenses, all that jazz. How do we, determine our pricing for each of those packages? And, say let's do it easy. We're going to shoot 25 weddings, or we're going to shoot 40 weddings, whatever numbers is going to make that easier.
Yeah. So the base price, and again, going back to episode 1, if somebody is shooting 20, 30, 40 weddings a year and their business is doing well, as far as a booked weddings standpoint, I would advise them to look at what do you want to make, what's your ideal, and price according to that. If somebody is just starting out, I would even say shoot a handful of weddings for friends for free, build up your portfolio, kind of what I mentioned before. So there would be 2 different routes. But let's say it's the person that's established, and a lot of people that come to my workshop, which is cool to see, are in that 20 to 30 weddings a year range, and they're wondering how do they get over the hump, because they're like, I'm shooting a good bit of weddings, but I'm not seeing the return that I want. So the easy thing is that figuring out what you want to live on, what it costs to run your business, and then how many weddings do you want to shoot, and doing that divided number to get your base price there. As far as products go, I think it's PPA recommends you do 5 times the cost. So if an album costs you $300 to print, you should charge $1,500 for the album. I think that's a little ridiculous with some things. So with albums, basically what we did was we charged for albums $100 a spread. So a 10 spread album, which is 20 pages, is $1,000. And then from there, after that, $100 a spread. And that's pretty standard for people that do IPS. In-person sales, it's $100 a spread. Other people will say, I will gift you the first 5 spreads and then you buy after that. But we actually have them pay up front for the first 10 spreads, and then they can add spreads after that. There for prints, we do instead of multiplying it by 5, we multiply it by 4. So let's say a canvas costs us $50, we charge $200 for that canvas. And then when there's collections of canvases, we'll discount them by 10%. So that's that. With engagement sessions, we charge $600 for the engagement session. And honestly, and I'll just put this out there again, if I don't have to shoot an engagement session, I don't want to. Because like I'll do an engagement session in Philly on a weekday. I got to get myself ready. I got to drive down there, which is sometimes 2 hours, depending on the time of day, do the shoot, drive back in traffic, all of that sort of stuff. $600 actually isn't even enough, for my time there. So I actually keep bumping up my engagement session price to the point of trying to lower how many people want to book it. So there's my only math behind that is how high can I get it so that less people will book it. That might be different for other, but then some people starting out, I encourage them, include the engagement session for free because you need content on your website. We're posting 90 weddings a year on our website, so we're not struggling for content. So if I can take that day back and put it towards investing into my business, I'd much rather invest in my business than go and do an 8-hour, day shooting an engagement session with drive time and all that sort of stuff.
Totally.
And there's no set rule, I think, for pricing stuff. You just got to do what's right for you and then profit at the end of it what you want to profit per wedding. But with co-shooters, we pay our co-shooter $400 for a full day and we charge the client $900. So we're only making a couple $100 off of that. But it's nice to have the co-shooter there because they can help me with setting stuff up. They can cover cocktail hour while I'm doing family formals. And honestly, what it really comes down to is what is it worth to you to have this done? And also, how much time does it cost you to perform that task? A co-shooter adds minimal time to my workflow, where an engagement session adds a ton of time to my workflow. So I'd much rather have somebody book a co-shooter and make that money over an engagement session because I know my time spent on that product that they're getting is much less. And then it's hard to determine sometimes, but figuring out all of those numbers. So let's say I profit off of a wedding. After all is said and done, I've paid my COGS and I've factored in my fixed expenses, all that sort of stuff. Let's say I profit, $3,000 on a wedding, and then it takes me 30 hours of time to do all the things I need to do for that wedding, including shooting it and whatnot. So I'm making $100 an hour. So then I know if I'm charging $600 for an engagement session, but that's 10 hours worth of work when all is said and done, I'm undercharging for that engagement session. What I mean? So when people include an engagement session for free, it kind of blows my mind because that's basically like your boss coming to you and saying, I want you to work an extra 20 hours this week, but you're going to get the same amount in your paycheck. You'd be like, heck no. I'm not going to do that. And people giving a free engagement session are basically saying, yeah, I'm going to take a pay decrease for this wedding.
Right. Totally. It's one of those things where even now, after being in your workshop, it's when we look at it just price wise, there's definitely like a line where you're like, oh, well, obviously we don't make as much from engagements as we do weddings or even family shoots or whatever. And so if you're a wedding photographer, then that's like your bread and butter. I do still think of it too outside of the numbers. Obviously, we have to consider like other things like that. But when it comes to profitability, and I have 2 points. So one is like, I definitely use it as part marketing, or at least like now after being in DC for a while, if you look up, name a famous thing in DC and then add an engagement session to it. Hopefully I'm on the front page of Google. Like that's part of my strategy, or that those photos show up. So at least we can get some attention, some eyes on the work. But it's one of those things where now, if you've been in business for a while, unless you enjoy doing them, right? That's where we're going to like the other variables. Like if you enjoy doing them or it is like a marketing thing for you, I almost look at like the engagement session as advertising. So it doesn't need to make as much money for me mentally, because because I'm like, hey, this is when people start paying attention. But that's just kind of that's my own personal strategy.
Yeah.
My question for you, when it comes to like your hourly rates, people hear $60 an hour on that $600 engagement session, and that still sounds pretty good. Like, what is that line for you? And then like, how can somebody determine that? Because there are some jobs where, maybe you choose to take it and you say, yeah, I'm not profiting that well on this. Maybe I'm only making $30 an hour, but it did fit some other values that you have. But how did you decide, like, what number did Mike want to make? Or did you just say, no, I just make more when I only do weddings?
Yeah. So on that, and also on the point that you just made about engagement sessions, what's really important when determining how you run your business or the things that you do is, what is the the ROI? What's the return on investment for this? So if engagement sessions is advertising, or I want to get some images out there because I know all of their friends are getting engaged and I want them to see my images, or I want to shoot at this venue because I want to try to work on being a preferred vendor. So I'm going to give the client a slight discount to be able to shoot there. I'm all for intentionality and strategy when it comes to growing your business. So I do all day wedding coverage, and that is absolute hands down the best selling point that I can offer. I could talk a whole podcast episode on why I think all day wedding coverage is important for vendor relationships, so much, but it's a selling point. So for some people, they know I can book a wedding over Mike Morby if I offer it for free because he's going to charge him $600. So yeah, if it's selling point, stuff like that, super important. But yeah, as far as determining, so for the engagement session, determining that cost was, yeah, maybe I want to make $100 an hour on the stuff that I do. But at the same time, I need to be sensitive to the market and reduce the cost of some things in order to stay competitive. Because if somebody comes to me and I'm charging $1,500 for an engagement session, even if they don't book that, they're going to look at me in comparison to the other people that they're, interviewing to shoot their wedding. They're going to look at me as somebody trying to nickel and dime them for every little thing. And I never want people to feel that way. Yeah, you can determine your hourly rate is super important, but at the same time, looking and saying, I can't charge over $1,000 for an engagement session, or I can't take PPA's advice and charge $2,000 for a wedding album because I want to use the most quality company. And so you figure out some of those numbers, but then you look at it with a practical eye and say, if I'm sitting in the client's seat, how is this price going to look? And then just kind of trusting your gut sometimes of, I probably should be charging this, but I think I need to shift it a little bit in order to stay relevant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was mostly curious too, just about like, how does Mike Morby, like how would you individually say, I only want to make $100 an hour? Like, how would you, versus like for most people listening, they hear 60 and they're like, that's still pretty good. Like that's kind of what I'm leaning towards now, is like, what's the next step of because I know you used to own another company that was like photo based, and you said eventually it wasn't profitable, but I know it's like, it's not profitable to a standard that like Mike has set, or that, maybe you got advice to set. So I'm curious about like, what's that next step?
Yeah. So with the photo booth company, we were making decent side money. That's the company you were talking, we ended up selling it, but yeah. I was making so much more shooting weddings, and I actually make twice the amount per hour if I have somebody else shoot the wedding for our company. So that's why associates are so, important. But yeah, I think determining that, like doing the math, figuring out what am I profiting per wedding, how many hours is it taking me to accomplish that? And then you get your hourly rate. And then once you know your hourly rate, so maybe in the beginning, $30 an hour is good, or 40 or 50. But if your company starts to scale and starts to grow, and you start making 100 an hour, 150 an hour, 200 an hour, whatever it is, then that becomes your new standard of this is how much my time is worth. And you start, so for me now, I start looking at the hours spent within my business, and I look at it, okay, if I can pay somebody $30 an hour to edit a wedding for me, that's a good business move, because I can make X amount an hour shooting a wedding. And so let me offload that. So once you get that hourly rate, then you try to, and this is business. This is trying to grow as a business owner. You try to get that hourly rate up. And so you start saying no to certain things that aren't going to yield a good return, like going and shooting real estate for $100 a house. Like, that's just not, for me right now, that's not worth my time as much as going and shooting a wedding or trying to train and book associates. And as that hourly rate starts going up, I've started to learn what things can I delegate in order to continue to increase that, and look at where I'm spending my time and making the most profit. It sounds so capitalistic, but it's running a business. And the cool thing is we have, if you include my wife and I, we have 5 salaried employees. But if you take us out, we have 3 salaried employees, and we're seeing it benefit their family. And, there's this excitement now of, employing people and doing all that sort of stuff. One kind of like comparison, and obviously neither one of us is this guy, but, Mark Cuban probably makes, $100,000 an hour for his time. Who knows what that guy makes for his time? So he's grown, or those people that make lots and lots of money, they've gotten to that point because they've learned how to focus in on their time and really value each hour that they're spending in business, and then delegating and offloading other things to other people, because they're realizing every hour of my time is really valuable, and I need to value it and price it accordingly.
Right. Totally. So I'm just guessing now that once you have that hourly rate, if you're trying to do what we talked about in the other episode, as far as like slow growth and stuff like that, if you're making profit at all, which maybe when you're first starting out, that number might not even be positive yet, is trying to say, you know what, for this year, like $60 an hour on all my weddings, like that's totally fine. And, obviously you can put this all in a spreadsheet and trial and error. And, as you grow, you can say, hey, I'm going to raise my prices. Like you had the demand, and then you decrease the supply, or up the quality of the supply. And then you're saying, hey, I'm making $75 an hour or whatever. Hey, I'm making $100 an hour. And eventually you can, get up to where, I know for you and I, we did our analysis. This is like earlier this year, and it's like it might be between $150 and $220 per hour for wedding stuff, depending on like, did we have an editor edit? Did we what level package it was? And that's where you can kind of be like, okay, yeah, this is where we want to sit. And especially for you guys, like you're trying to provide salaries for people and like take care of them. So you need that number to be higher than maybe like, if you told your parents 5 years ago that, hey, I'm going to make $220 an hour, they'd be like, what? And it's not the same, but it is like the number now that's in your head that you have to correspond to. So no, I appreciate that. Yeah. That's awesome.
And sometimes as well, you have that number and you can make decisions based on it. But again, you don't have to make every decision based on a dollar amount. Like for family members, like my wife's cousin just got married, and I photographed the wedding for free. Anytime anybody wants, I don't shoot family sessions anymore, but anytime a friend wants a family session, I shoot it for free. All of that sort of stuff. So, there's that as well of I have that hourly rate so that I know if somebody emails me and says, I want you to photograph a cake smash for, the 1 year birthday cake smash thing. That's kind of good.
Yeah.
For $300, I can look at that quickly and evaluate. It's not worth my time.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be arrogant in that. And I don't think we should be arrogant in that, but I think within the photography community, there's this disdain sometimes towards the business and the profitability side of things, and this glorification of the art and the craft. But we're business owners, and we need to view things as business owners, especially if we want to not burn out and sustain long term and set boundaries. All of that sort of stuff. It's really important. It's not out of greed. It's not out of arrogance. It's out of just an understanding of we're running a business. Even though it's a creative business, we're still running a business, and we need to view it that way. If we heard Tim Cook talk like this, we would say, "Oh yeah, I get it." Or if we heard, the CEO of some big company or the people on Shark Tank, we're like, we have this understanding that, oh yeah, they're business owners, it's okay. But then when it comes to photography, there's this like angst of, oh, but it's art. I can't make that money off of art, and but yeah, we need to view it as a business owner, and that knowing your hourly rate gives you that barometer to just make wise decisions.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when I started, I literally, just took gigs so that I could, not have to get a real job, quote unquote, and could get Taco Bell whenever I wanted. And now it's like, oh, I need to pay a mortgage in, the third most expensive city in the country. Okay, this is real. This is like, you have to really dive in. And the artisanal, waft and glow, it goes away real quickly, when you have to get to work and you have to do real stuff. And, even you, especially just experience with like having staff and growing and working with your wife and stuff like that, there's challenges that come with that too. And none of that is related to photography. None of that's related to kind of the joy you get on a shoot when you're with a couple or anything like that. Like, but those are, the better you're at those things, the better you are at those things, the better your business is going to be. And hopefully, the goal, between all of this and pricing profitability is like the boring stuff. But I only know this because I know you, and vice versa, is the goal with all of this is to get this set and to have a system so that we are more fulfilled in our business. Yeah. Rather than our business being a stressor and a liability, we can try to get it into an asset where like, this is a good thing. This is a great thing. Only now, 3 years after being full-time and this being my sole income and like buying a house, are my family members like, oh, like that's a real thing. He's still doing that thing. It's a real thing. And
that's not just a side hobby.
Yeah. And I'm just like, man, I feel like I've been grinding for a long time, and, not as long as Mike Morby, of course, but, a decent amount of time. And so it's all of this. I always say like the boring stuff, the demystifying what it takes to actually make this happen is not the fun, fruity stuff. This doesn't, the K next to your Instagram following does not matter when your mortgage payment comes in, or when your car payment comes in, or when you have car trouble. And, these things are what matter. And I don't know, it's like, this is like the 101 of business. But once you're done, hopefully you don't have to worry about it anymore, and you get to know it, and you touch base as often as you'd like. But it's one of those things where I know it's not the most attractive thing to think about, but the goal is so that you're, more fulfilled and that you're not stressed out. And like we talked about in episode 1, so that like come December or January, we're not like, oh, where's the money coming from? Whereas like in the fall, we're like, Daddy Warbucks just making money, and, we're swimming in pools of cash and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, that was a joke we made about you at the workshop, is your goal was to swim in pools of cash. But I think you hit it like perfectly, is like fulfillment in our job is so important. And you're part of the photography groups, as am I, where people are like stretched thin and they're stressed out, and you can't, I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said like anxiety kills creativity, I think was like the quote. When you're like so stretched thin and stressed out and lacking sleep, the art suffers. But yeah, once you can start to put those boundaries in and make what you're worth and know these are my limits and this is what I cost, you actually end up serving the client better because you're offering a better product. I used to feel bad sometimes for my October couples because I was giving them like complete leftovers of burnt out Mike. And now I feel I actually only now shoot one wedding a weekend and I take one weekend off a month. And I don't shoot Sundays because I feel I can offer my employees and my clients so much more when I'm not stretched so thin. So it's real important. And somebody setting this stuff in the beginning, obviously you have to grind it out to grow the business. You can't just all of a sudden say, I'm only going to shoot one wedding a weekend when you haven't even shot one wedding. That doesn't work that way. But knowing this stuff and like the end goal for quality of life will keep people from burning out and just feeling so overwhelmed because nobody wants that quality of life. Yet I think a lot of people have that quality of life because they haven't done the proper foundational things in structuring their business.
Right. Totally. It's just the grind may seem attractive and fun right now. And it can be. It's really fun. And like all-nighters are great. And it's a good time. And we've all been there editing. And like I used to have an editing routine where it'd be like I'd get the certain kind of drink and a certain kind of food, and I would just sit at the computer and be like, all right, we're gonna bust out a wedding or two. Or earlier in the season, before I got an editor, I edited like 4 weddings in a day just straight, and it was the longest I'd ever actually just sat there and done that. And afterwards I was like, yeah, this was dumb. That was not what I want to be doing at all. And I remember this actually, we referenced Hoffer already, but he had a DVD back in the day called Workflow, and him and Spencer were talking about this, and this isn't the main principle to ride or die by, but kind of what we're talking about, just a good reference for people to eventually think about, is that we only make money as photographers when we're pressing that button, outside of album sales, I would say, is like, and that was a really good reference for me. It was like, no, like I'm getting paid to show up and do the best thing I can do. Everything else is, not what those dollars are going towards. Like they're all like kids, and I'm like passing out, the weekends food to them. I'm like, all right, editing, you get 6 hours worth of money. Hey, admin, you get 2 hours worth of money. But the goal is like, we only make money when we're pressing that button. And so being able to, you still shoot 40 weddings a year, even though you guys are doing a lot of stuff. And it's like, that's still, it's going to bring in cash. It's going to bring in the most cash, but you don't do a lot of other stuff that is kind of on the same level. You're much more like CEO now. And I don't know, that was always just like a really good kind of, to wrap it up, that was just a really good saying, like, hey, we only make money when we're pressing the button. Unless somebody buys your wedding photos, which would be weird, but
yeah. So totally. Like, no, 100% agree. Yeah. And I hope just overall from episode 1 and this one is just really just the importance of knowing your numbers, knowing how much you're making per hour. The hourly rate thing is so important. When I do the math for people in workshops, sometimes some people are making like $20, $25 an hour shooting a wedding. And I say to them, you'd be better off co-shooting or associate shooting because you're making so much less than if you would be doing that. And some people are blown away at how much they're making per hour because they're like, oh, I made $1,000 that wedding, but took them 50 hours to do everything. And they're really actually only making $20 an hour. And it's a real big eye opener when you start to dig in. It's boring, like you said, but yeah, it's super important. And then you can realize, the more I'm out shooting, that's, like you said, making money when you're clicking the button rather than sitting behind a computer.
Right. Totally. It's one of those things. I have never had a 6-pack, but I hopefully someday will. But I imagine it's like the boring work is, working out. And then the success stories and, whatever you want to put on Instagram, or the vacation you can take, or the mental clarity you have from not being burnt out, is having the six pack and just, walking around on the beach and you're like, all right, I'm looking good, but people don't know like the hard work that went into that. And you just got to do it. It's more important than I think a lot of things is are you a business and are you making money? So that's awesome, man. I absolutely love that you came on, man, and I'm so glad we split this into 2 episodes. This is awesome. So the first one, if you're listening to this one and you haven't listened to episode 1, that is just a week behind this one, and that is the how to just know how much you cost. How do you determine everything that it takes for you to run your business? What do you want to get paid personally? All that stuff. That's in episode 1, and then this one is using that data to create packages and collections that are going to help you profit. And I seriously appreciate it, dude. I hope everybody, whenever you announce your next workshop, I hope everybody goes to it. And I hope that they are already making money. I hope that they don't have $25 an hour or $17 an hour in their packages. I hope it's, hundreds of dollars. And man, hopefully 2019 is a great year for both of us, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoy this and enjoy talking business.
Awesome, man. Is it fair to say that if anybody has questions or anything like that, or wants to pick your brain, can they just shoot you an email? I know you love talking business, and you answer all my emails, at least.
Yeah, no, totally. Especially going into off season, I have more time for brain picking.
I love it. Thanks so much, Mike.
It doesn't make any money per hour, but it's what I love to do, so I'm willing to sacrifice.
Exactly. That's what we talked about. Like, if you like it, then you can kind of adjust different things. So I love it so much, Mike. That's awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, there was our second episode with Mike Morby. So much fun to talk to that guy. That's his 3rd time being on the podcast, and he's on here because he's an expert. He's a guy I respect. I mean, anybody whose workshop I've taken twice, you guys know, is going to be an expert in their field. And so, although it sounded, it can get really boring to dive into the numbers and it can seem really cumbersome, it's one of those things that it's a shield financially against your well-being, essentially. Like, it's going to help you. And again, we just want you to be fulfilled in your business rather than stressed out by your business. And money isn't everything, but money is the currency and the tool that we use to amplify who we are in the world and just to live. And so I think it's really, really useful that we had somebody on who can just kind of help us, like, all right, how do I know my numbers and how do I price myself? So hopefully you guys really love that. One favor for you guys, if you have not joined the Patreon yet, that is our fun entry-level access for all things Beer to Talk. So things like camera settings, galleries, we're just talking shop. It's a really cool community. And I would love for you to go over there, check that out. We're going to talk gear. We're going to talk everything in the Patreon. And it's going to be really, really fun. We're even going to give away some of the things we give away in mentorship over in the Patreon. It's just $10. And we would love to have you. A link is in the show notes. Have a wonderful day. And I would encourage you to check out Mike's workshops when they are launched. You can follow him on all the channels, and we'll link him in the show notes as well. Have a wonderful day, guys. Keep being awesome.